Many cars piled up at one of the intersections in the city centre. At that moment, an ambulance siren sounded somewhere behind. Almost synchronously, the drivers of the vehicles pushed to the sides as much as they could to create a free corridor for the ambulance to pass through. But an expensive car completely blocked the passage for the ambulance and did not even try to move. The driver of the ambulance honked and blinked his lights, but the owner of the car ahead wasn't reacting. And only after several minutes, after showing an indecent gesture through the window, the driver of the car gave the gas and the ambulance was finally able to continue. Judging by the increased speed, the ambulance crew was taking a seriously ill patient to the hospital. Meanwhile, the owner of the expensive car calmly drove a block and parked in front of one of the beautiful houses. The doorbell rang, and Samantha went to open it. "Mom, I apologise for being so late. There was a traffic jam, so I got held up. By the way, where's Daddy? Is he coming for dinner?" "Of course, son. We won't be having dinner without Daddy. He has some business with his business partner. He called and asked him to wait." "Oh, but why are you so sad?" Tristan lowered his head and quietly replied, "I broke up with my girlfriend today. I got a little angry. I said some unnecessary words to her and now I'm sorry. But don't worry, it'll soon pass. And your son will be back in the company of some charming girl." With a deep sigh, the mother said, "I did not think that my son would turn out to be a heartbreaker. Your father is an entirely different man. He is inclined to observe moral values. You should take his example and stop living a dissolute lifestyle." Tristan smiled slightly in reply and went to his room. An hour later, the father of the family arrived. "Honey, I'm home, and I want to talk to you. Frederick is in trouble. His daughter is ill and he may need money urgently. I would like to spend some of our savings, if it will be necessary." Looking at his wife, Edward expected her to be indignant, but instead Samantha took his hand and said, "What a forgetful husband I have. I told you, even before our wedding, that we would solve all problems together. And since your business partner, and most importantly, your best friend needs support, we will definitely help him. Remember that only the most reliable people are next to you in a difficult time, so show Frederick that he can count on you." Edward smiled, glad to see such mutual understanding. "I was right to marry you, sweetheart, because you always support me. Well, is Tristan at home yet? Or at his friends again? You know, I'm a patient man, but there's a limit to everything. He hasn't worked in 6 months since he got kicked out of the ad agency. Sometimes I feel like he's not our son. And please don't whitewash him, because, by the way, you indulge him. And as for my company, I won't take him in. I don't want to shame myself in front of my partners." At this time, Tristan came out of his room and said loudly, "I'm sorry to interrupt your discussion about me, but I'm so hungry I can't think of anything else but food." Dinner passed almost in complete silence, because Samantha and Edward had already discussed everything, and their son was in no hurry to share the day's events. After dinner, Tristan was about to leave for his room again, but his father stopped him. "Don't rush off. I want to have a serious talk with you." Taking the hint, Samantha headed for her bedroom. "I'll watch the show while it's on TV." After closing the door behind her, Edward continued, "Tristan, you're a big boy and should already take responsibility for your life and achieve at least some goals. Aren't you ashamed in front of your own friends that you still live off your parents?" Tristan lowered his head sadly and said, "I already tried to work, but it didn't work out. You know why I was fired, don't you? Then why all this talk again? I told you I'm going to find a source of income, and I am already in the process. Don't worry, it'll be okay in the end. By the way, do you know anybody in the police department?" Edward suddenly shuddered. Well, I know a man. Why are you asking? Have you done something wrong? Tell me, son, otherwise it'll be worse. You know, I won't cover it up, but if you're innocent, I'll do everything I can to keep you out of trouble. In response, the son said the first thing that came to mind. Well, I just, recently ran a red light, so now I'm worried about the fine. Edward exhaled heavily. Oh, I even felt relieved because you scared me, son. Don't do that again. If you run a red light, it was a bad thing, and you'd better watch out. But I think we can work it out. I know people in the police, so I don't think there'll be a problem. In general, you have to watch the road and obey the rules. The next morning, when Tristan woke up, he found his father in the kitchen in an anxious state. He was talking excitedly on the phone and looking out the window. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Frederick. I talked to my wife. She approved of my idea. And come on, don't say no. We've known each other for years. Okay, I'll come to the office soon and we'll talk there. Edward put the phone in his pocket and walked away from the window. Hi, son. I'm leaving for work. My business partner called me, and Mother has already left to visit her parents. They need help there. Tristan sat down in his chair, relieved. He thought his father had been called about his stupid antics at the intersection, which he had already regretted many times. The ambulance driver might have remembered the license plate number, and even if he didn't, there was a good chance he was caught on camera. In general, his silly prank could turn into a huge problem, especially since the car was registered to his mother, and she will be the first person whom they call. Although Tristan's father asked him to start looking for a job, Tristan spent the whole day in the company of his friends, where he absolutely forgot about the ambulance and his job search. At 10:30, Tristan arrived home. His father was sitting in the kitchen and talking to his wife. Hi, everyone, and not to raise any unnecessary questions, I haven't found a job yet, but I promise I'll definitely get a job this week. Sitting down at the table, Tristan slid a platter with cheesecake to him. I'm so hungry, Mum. Thanks for your speciality cheesecake. Edward turned to his wife and continued. Well, like I said, Frederick needs help. I do not know how it could happen. Poor girl. Hearing the name of his father's business partner, Tristan asked, Is something wrong with him? Dad, you run the company together. Now we have to economize because of him. The father raised his eyebrows and said, You certainly don't have to do anything, but I have to help a good man. I can't abandon him in his time of need. Frederick's daughter was taken to the hospital yesterday. She was in urgent need of medical attention. And by the way, some fool blocked the road, can you imagine? Because of this silly prank, valuable time was lost. Her condition has deteriorated sharply, and the chances of recovery with it. I don't understand what the police are doing. By the way, yes, I should visit an old acquaintance and find out who dared to commit such mischief. I'll ask about your running a red light too. At this minute, a countdown began for Tristan, because his father could find out the truth in a heartbeat. Tristan went to his room, lay down on his bed, and stared at the ceiling in silence. For the first time he was afraid, but not for himself, but for Frederick's daughter. While he was lying there, the thought occurred to him that he should confess everything. But knowing his father, Tristan didn't risk it. At the same time, he really was eager to learn from the doctors how to help the girl. Suddenly the door opened and his mother looked in. Son, if you don't have anything important to do tomorrow, will you come with us to the cemetery? Tristan turned white with horror, and Samantha came over to him and sat down beside him. Well, why are you so nervous? We visit your cousin who died in the accident every year. Have you forgotten? Daddy's going to the office in the morning on business, and then he'll pick us up. So be ready. At the cemetery they quickly found Chloe's grave, and while his parents were cleaning it, Tristan was looking at the inscriptions of the neighbouring gravestones. Remembering the ambulance, he wept bitterly. A bewildered mother approached and hugged her son. "Oh, son, calm down. She's already in a better world. I had no idea you could be so emotional." Tristan looked at his mother and replied, "Of course you think I'm a soulless man, but I have feelings too. Father, you said your partner's daughter is in hospital. Can I visit her?" "I don't even know. She's in intensive care right now. And why would you do that? After all, you don't know her at all." "My emotions are awakened. As Mum said, I also want to help someone. Don't be surprised, but your son knows how to sympathise. True, it rarely happens." Edward took out a notebook and wrote down the address of the hospital where Frederick's daughter had been taken. Giving the piece of paper to his son, he asked again, "Don't you want to add anything? Why don't you tell me why you're suddenly interested in a strange girl?" Tristan didn't answer anything, just shrugged his shoulders. After the cemetery, Tristan began packing for the hospital. Naturally, he was not allowed into the intensive care unit, but he managed to talk to a nurse. And she said that the girl was asleep now under medication, but doctors hoped that in a week the patient's condition would improve noticeably. Tristan visited Hayley in the hospital every day. She didn't know it, but he brought flowers every time and left them with the nurse on duty. A week later, as the doctors had predicted, Hayley regained consciousness. And the first thing she saw was Tristan's face behind the glass divider. At that moment, a nurse came up to her and completely obscured her view. The guy stood there a little longer and left. He stayed away from the hospital for days, wondering what to do. Eventually, he decided to confess to the girl and ask her forgiveness. But Tristan was out of luck. Just outside her ward, he bumped into his father and Frederick. The father looked at his son with great disappointment and pain. "Well, son, come on in." The father pulled a folded sheet of paper from his briefcase. "Here's your car number, the ambulance and the exact time. Do you have anything to tell us?" 3 pairs of eyes looked at him. "Yes, I was the one who didn't miss the ambulance at the intersection. I don't know what got into me then. I was angry. I really regret what I have done. Forgive me for such a foolish behaviour, and I am ready to suffer the punishment I deserve." Frederick and his father looked at each other, and then at Hayley. "Well, what do you say? Can you forgive him?" The girl hesitated and then replied, "I think yes. Just give him to me to re-educate him." Frederick looked at his daughter. "All right, let him work off the damage he's done." Tristan's father even laughed. "Well, now at least I won't have to look after him. Maybe we'll go to the sea with Samantha. We haven't been there for a long time." "I am kidding, of course, but seriously, I hope that Hayley will make a nice person out of him." Whether she succeeded or not, it was too early to draw conclusions. But Tristan visited her in the hospital every day until she was discharged. After a while, they started dating, and then Tristan told his parents that he proposed to Hayley. The man came to his senses. He finally got the job he enjoyed and was no longer a troublemaker.